sort of go around in a circle and give anybody who wants to their chance, although Steve, I see, wants to go first. Maybe you should go, Steve.
Okay. I'd like to go back a little bit and concerned with the original impulse that was enacted during this period. We've just lived through the enacted impulses of the collective conscious. You have to throw Madison, Wisconsin, and Ohio, and your own life into all of it. It was at a party Saturday night after I performed in the hip-hop club. I was talking to a bunch of young guys. And I'm aware of this when I bring up Abby Hoffman, who they never heard of, Emma Goldman, and about 6 other greats. Because I used to have a line that used to go, the dates of the wars are burned into our brains, but the people's struggle for peace is stashed under the royal historian's robes, or where the gold is hidden. So people don't know shit in school. That's why they don't take Abby Hoffman and 6 other great people that I mentioned. When you go back a few years to a guy named Gene Sharp, who ran the Albert Einstein Institute of Nonviolence in Boston. His books were translated to several creation around the world, many languages, and Gene Sharp is an important element. He's not the entire element. But Gene Sharp's books were translated in Yugoslavia, Serbia, and these books are about nonviolence. And they started studying nonviolence, which is a brand new thing for that part of the world. It's a brand new thing in most of the world. Nonviolence, what it really is, and its anarchist impulse. The people in Serbia start reading him, forming these cells in these groups, and eventually got rid of Milosevic. They started emailing and Facebooking and all the rest of that stuff, tweeting to people in Tunisia. And people in Tunisia, guys came from Serbia to Tunisia and were turning on these people in Tunisia to these ideas of non-violent action. The people in Tunisia were texting and emailing everybody they could in Cairo. So you see the development of a world that's being squeezed. And some people can just say, how much more of this shit can I take? Which I say every day, and I'm sure you say every day too, it's okay. But in following Madison or Cairo, you have a working man, wakes up in the morning, gets his kid breakfast, the wife does it, he's sending his kids off to school, he gives them a kiss, get to school safely, don't talk to any weirdos, and I'll see you then. He looks up at the clock, whether he's in Madison or he's in Cairo, and he's got 10 minutes as he sips his last cup of coffee. He says, how much more of this shit can I take? Because he knows he's going to do the 12-hour day. And when he gets home to play with his children, he hasn't got much left. So what happens in Madison is that all of a sudden, they want to take away what people fought so hard 50 years ago, 60 years ago to create, collective bargaining. And all of a sudden it's too much and people are out in the street. The thing in Cairo is similar but very different, because it affects an entire country. Because people are basically saying at this time, how much more of this shit can I take? But all of a sudden this information is coming around from Gene Sharp and the American Albert Einstein Institute of Nonviolence. We watched this all, and we're cheering for it more like any fucking ball game you can ever cheer for. You're hoping that these people in Cairo were going to get to first base. Everybody there was cheering for them. It happened in other countries too. Guys like Gaddafi saw this happening, and since his socialism pays the people's bills, and people aren't as hard up and as poor as they are in Egypt, they don't come along very well, the protesters, in getting everybody to be on their side. As a matter of fact, the people in Libya should have talked and listened to more people doing in Tunisia and Cairo. This was clear from the beginning that
part of the reason they didn't, you understand, is because it's such a tightly controlled dictatorship that they didn't have free access to the internet.
Yes, but they should have known that Gaddafi will say, not in my bag. And since Gaddafi was backed up by these people who was using socialism to keep them cool, whereas in the other countries, they're really having a tough time. So the people, like all of us, do you ever think, do you really realize what we're really up against here? No? Do you ever think, have that moment where you go, holy shit, dude, I got it. To make this new fucking world, man. But you do it because you're a great coming attraction and you're hoping the movie's going to be as good as the coming attraction. So we see Cairo go so far, we see Tunisia go so far, we see what's happening in Libya. It's more complicated than it should have been. And you say, what's the next step in Egypt? Now, America's got guys in the basement of the White House saying, who do we put into all these countries? When we dig, who the people are going to dig, and we'll help them squeeze out a little more democracy to keep them cool. We'll give them this, we'll give them that. That's their next step. They have to figure this out, the Americans. That's what they're doing. Meanwhile, the people in Madison, the people in Cairo, what's their next step? Anarchism is a brand new word on that planet. Nonviolence was a brand new word in that world, but all of a sudden, you saw it in Cairo, people coming down with barber chairs, giving free haircuts. Yippee! They were coming around, women with giant trays of sweets. They swept up that square. Do you see the spirit that they had going there? Now in America, we know no culture, no politics. Danger, no culture. There is a great cultural underground movement in America that has to centralize, excuse me, being an anarchist, has to centralize for a moment so we can have that spirit. Because we don't have that spirit right now. And when that culture conceptualizes and tells people we're out there for you, it can decentralize. So the thing is, like, I'm an anarchist 50 years, I'm an artist, I'm an activist, I do a lot of stuff in the city. It goes down, what can I do as an anarchist? Live my life as an anarchist. I've been an unpaid tenant organizer for 20 years. I try to do that like an anarchist, and that comes up with all of that shit you got to deal with. Just like you're trying to get Americans to realize. People say, I wonder why the Americans aren't out in the street. Have you heard that? Have you heard that this year? I wonder why the Americans, but they're beginning. There's trying to be the beginning of a new union movement. You have guys like head of the steel workers and the guy who's head of the AFL are really tremendous people. They're really tremendous people. So when you go back to Cairo, and then when you look at Libya, you say to yourself, oh, fuck, are they going to get it? Boy, and they're getting it. And so I just to conclude here, there's an old saying by Isaiah the prophet who said, shall we learn by fire alone? Wilhelm Reich said, not necessarily, baby, because no matter how bad it gets, it doesn't make it better. And Gustav Landau, a great anarchist, said, when we want it, when we want it. How do we get the people to want this? Of our vision, of our analysis of anarchist socialism, libertarian socialism, anarchist communism, whatever you fucking want to call it, a vision put down by the IWW in 1905 that created one of the fiercest union movements and progressive movements in the history of the world. And I listened to a lot of guys more than 40 years ago when I was young, and now I'm one of those guys. I listen to all those guys. No, I'm the 70-something-year-old guy who's trying to talk to the youth, because I listen to all these stories about organizing and read all the great books of anarchism. So I just have to boil it down to Madison, Ohio, and New York City.
Okay. Well, I was going to say maybe since how much time do we have left?
It's about an hour at this point.
Yeah. So maybe we should try to apply voluntary time next time. Start taking this just so that if not three people.